So I found out, and I verified this through multiple sources, that if you are at the actual Navy Top Gun school, right, the actual one, and you quote the movie Top Gun, you will be fined $5. And I'm like, I wouldn't have made it through the first day.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Scuttlebutt. I'm your host, Shaun Hall, the Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club, a small nonprofit based in Pittsburgh, PA. Our mission is to create communities of listening around veterans to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. Our program, the Scuttlebutt, was created to highlight the educational element of our mission by discussing recent military headlines and topics to help bridge the civilian-military divide. Me, along with one of my co-hosts, Danny Perkins, are not veterans. Danny, you're new to the Scuttlebutt. I'd like you to go ahead and introduce yourself if you'd like, sir.
Sure. As Shaun mentioned, my name is Danny Perkins. I'm a professor at Penn State University with the Clearinghouse for Military Family Readiness, and looking forward to the conversation today.
Wonderful. Great to have you, Danny. Thank you so much for joining us. Our other two co-hosts today are, James Martin. He is a post 9/11 Marine Corps veteran of 17 years. Thank you again for joining us, James. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm great, thanks. And lastly, Ryan All, currently still active as in the Army Reserves.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm an Army veteran. I've been deployed to Iraq a few times, and now I work for the VA, specifically the Pittsburgh Vet Center, where we assist war zone veterans and their families with free and confidential counseling. And I've been working with the BBC for a while now, and I love what you guys do. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here. And, as a civilian, I noticed I said that you're still active, but you said you're a veteran. So to me, that doesn't make sense to me. So in the reserves, are you considered a veteran, or are you still active?
Well, there's many different definitions of the term, like veteran, right? And it's kind of been like one of these things that's, I think, has been brought to light over the past 10 years or so, right? So you can have traditional National Guard and Reserve soldiers who may not meet the VA's definition of a veteran for the purpose of benefits, but they're still a veteran of military service. But then you kind of have this differentiation of like being a Iraq War veteran or a Afghanistan veteran. So that is also a term, right, that you can use, saying like I was a veteran of the war in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
So, although I'm still in the reserves and still like actively drilling for a few more years, I still try to avoid confusion by saying yes, I'm also a veteran of the war in Iraq.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarity. And that's something that we try to do here on the Scuttlebutt is me being a civilian. There's a lot of things in the military that I don't understand. So I think a lot of our viewers might be interested to know some of these things. So if I ask a stupid question, I will own up to it. And as for our viewers, if you'd be so kind, we ask that you please help spread our Scuttlebutt by liking, sharing, subscribing, ringing the bell on YouTube. We also want to connect with you, so please leave us a comment on YouTube or send us an email at shaun@veteransbreakfastclub.com. And that brings us straight to our mail call. We have fans.
You have fans.
The bar's pretty low here, apparently.
Our mail comes from Rick Arisman. He is a Navy veteran of the Vietnam era, an ex-radio man second class, ex-park ranger as well. He asked in his email, and this was in response to our episode about thank you for your service. He said, how about thank you for your sacrifice of your time and perhaps life? James, we dove a lot into thank you for your service in that episode. Ryan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because it seems to have brought up a lot of mail for us as people talking about how do you feel when someone says thank you for your service?
Well, for the longest time, I always felt really awkward. It's like that same situation where you're walking around in uniform and people come up and say thank you for your service, and you just you don't know what to say, right? Like it's kind of just it's your job, and there's a level of familiarity there where you don't necessarily go up to a guy in a car wash and say thank you for your service, right? It's like so there's for a while there awkward. But it took a while. So now I just say, it's my pleasure, because when I sat down and I thought about it, like I'm doing this because I want to. It's an all volunteer force, right? And the Army has given me more than it has taken, and that's how I kind of view it. Is that it is my pleasure. I do this because I want to, and happy to be here. I'm happy to be here. Proud to serve. Right.
It's a great answer. And Danny, you've been working with veterans for how long?
I've been working with military and veterans for over a decade.
Okay. And have you always said thank you for your service? Is that something that you like to say? Is there something different that you usually say?
Well, I usually, if I can, it's more in a conversation, right? Because I want to understand a little bit more. I think part of the challenge with thank you for your service, if you're doing it without the genuineness of trying to really honor the fact that people are giving you opportunities to live a life you want to live, right? And so I think most people, I think, are saying it because of that. I do believe that, right? But some people are saying it because they think they have to, and that's not necessarily what we want. We want them to have a connection, because we do. It's less than 1% of the folks don on the uniform to protect whatever freedoms we believe are dear to our hearts. And so I do say it. I try to say it, though, in a way that allows for conversation.
I think that you hit the nail on the head there. That's something that we brought up in that actual that episode. If you want to go back and give it a listen, is trying to find out more. If it's just a thank you for your service one off, that might not be kind of enough. Like it might be worth it for you to have a more in-depth conversation with the veteran to find out where they served, how long they served, what branch they served in, why they served. James, you talked about that in that episode, is respecting the veteran, but also showing a sort of curiosity for what they've been through.
Mm-hmm. And then I like how you said, what about sacrifice for your time? Can't remember exactly. I'm paraphrasing, but sacrifice of your time, your effort, your energy, basically. And I think it's all implied that I have to look at it from a civilian standpoint. It's like, hey, you sacrificed time away from family, sometimes relationships, sleep in your own bed, whatever it is, you gave this for us. So thank you for your service. I think it's always implied. Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't have to say it. That's almost a little extra.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because if you have any idea of what the military does or watch the movie, we've done some of that. So it's there.
Right.
And like I said before, it's not just the sacrifice for me. And I felt the same way Ryan did. At first, it was a little offsetting, but then I understood that you're saying it to me in lieu of everyone else has done it, has gone before me, those who are still doing it. Mm-hmm. So it's just, thank you for your continued support, because I know I'm not the only one you see.
Right. And Rick Erisman also went on to say in his email that he was not aware that the traditional U.S. Navy peacoat was being phased out at the beginning of October and replaced by the cold weather parka. He says, "What a crock. It's a symbol for the sailor and his sacrifice. I'm glad I still have mine, even if I can't wear it." This peacoat, this is a big deal that they were phasing it out.
I have a peacoat just because I thought the Navy's peacoat was awesome. I have my own.
I do too.
Like I always thought the peacoat was. I can make fun of the Sailor Jack outfit and the whole 9 yards until I'm blue in the face. That peacoat in a nice suit, man,
it's crisp.
Works out just fine.
Keeps and it's nice pretty and warm.
Yeah, it's exactly. Keeps you nice and warm. Uh-huh. It's a win.
Yeah. Ryan, have you ever tried on the Navy peacoat?
This is one of those things that I don't know much about. Everything in the Navy is weird to me.
He meant that in a very positive way.
Yeah.
The way they talk,
positively weird.
The way they talk, their traditions, what they call themselves, it's like a whole nother world. Mm-hmm. Unless you have grown up or know much about the Navy, it's even weird to other guys in the military. We don't know. No,
Ryan, I think that's actually a really good point. It is a part that civilians don't realize. So they'll use the word military, and they think that's universal. Like, well, it doesn't really matter whether you were in the Army or Marines, because it's all military, right? But actually, they do have a unique culture that they have. They also have a universal culture, but then there's these unique parts of their culture. And what hit me most as a civilian entering this area was, for example, lieutenant colonel, how that is shortened and what capitalized and what isn't depends on what service you're in.
What service you're in, yep.
Right. And so most civilians, I don't think, realize that, and nor should they necessarily until they hear about it, right? That there's these differences in the culture that do play out a little bit.
I think that's a great idea for us to have a full Scuttlebutt episode on, is the differences between the branches, the different sort of cultural things that are there. Rick, thank you so much for sending in your email. We implore everyone else, please send us an email. We love to open up our mail call. But speaking to the sort of the weirdness of the Navy, that leads us to our next segment, which is the word or phrase of the week. This week, it is a word. And it's something that came up in our Veterans Breakfast Club live event. The word gedunk, spelled Gedunk.
Gedunk.
Gedunk. James, do you know what gedunk stands for?
The first time I ever heard it was in boot camp, and I thought that my drill instructor had lost all bits of his language, because he's like, go get that gedunk, and I'm like, you mean the snacks and those cookies and such? Yeah, okay. So gedunk is a term used for just that, snacks, snack food and things like that. Basically anything that isn't nutritious falls in the gedunk category.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I asked my coworker who's a Marine. I said, "What have you ever heard of this?" He's like, "Oh yeah. I've never heard it before. I'm an Army guy." He's like, "Oh yeah," and I'm like, "What is it?" He's like, "Just snacks, so much candy." In the Army, we typically call pogey bait. Is what we
pogey bait.
Same.
So, pogey bait is a play on words. So are you familiar with the term pogue?
No.
Okay, so pogue is spelled P-O-G. And it means it's an acronym for person other than grunt.
Okay.
Meaning everyone who's not a combat arms person, everyone who's not on the front lines getting dirty, running around, so on and so forth. So, because I enlisted and I was an infantryman, like the worst thing you could call a person was a pogue.
Oh.
Like if you really wanted to get under an infantry guy's skin, you call him a pogue, right? So, so the term pogey bait is like, oh, you can catch yourself a pogue by laying out these snacks, which you're never allowed to have as an infantry guy because you're just surviving on MREs and water. So they call it pogey bait. Like if you have too much out, the pogues are gonna show up and eat all your snacks because they're used to high living in the rear with the gear.
Mm-hmm.
See, word of the week becomes two words of the week. We have pogey bait and now we have gedunk. And I also heard that gedunk was sort of the sound that the snack would make as it was exiting the vending machine. That it comes down gedunk through the machine.
That.
But we also, in one of our VBC live events, talked about how this was actually like an ice cream parlor. 1943 in the South Pacific, you wanted to get out of the heat and get your ice cream. You went over to the gedunk. So there's some different meanings behind that, but yeah, if next time you want to go get your snacks, say that you're going to get some gedunk and see what your wife says.
See.
I wonder if that means it's fewer calories too, because that would help me. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
See, Ryan, and that right there, that history piece, that shows artillery and the infantry, we didn't make it to the ice cream stand. They had to come to us. So that right there, that's that proof in the pudding right there.
Right. They bring it out to you in the field. A guy
the good humor truck with the bells and everything.
Chow truck.
They come out to you when you're training in the field. They call it the gut truck. And
the gut truck. Yep.
You pay out the nose for what you're getting.
Is the gut truck meaning one, it'll mess up your gut, or one, it'll expand your gut?
Yes.
Yes.
Both. Both. Because by the time the ice cream would have made it, it'd have been melted. We'd have been, they'd have been like, here goes your straw. Here goes your spoon and your straw. What do you need the straw for? It's ice cream. It ain't all there. It ain't.
Yeah. Moving on to our headline. We have a headline this week. The Marines are weighing closing Parris Island and San Diego to open up a new co-ed boot camp. The 2020 National Defense Authorization Act directed the Marine Corps to implement a gender-integrated training at Parris Island within 5 years and San Diego within 8 years. Female recruits currently only ship to Parris Island and have historically trained in separate companies from men. That changed last year when the first ever co-ed company graduated from Parris Island. Parris Island is in South Carolina. It was first used by the Marines in the 1890s. This is big news, and James, you are not happy with that possible change.
I'm not happy with the idea of them talking about closing it, or the understanding of repurposing it and want to go co-ed is fine. In my own heart of hearts, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm just being outright nasty about it, that's going to lead to an interesting dynamic that I would love to see the science behind it after it was done. To just close Parris Island, or even the thought of it, because there's even been talks about closing it just because they can make a lot of money off the land. There's a lot of history there, and I would be deeply saddened to see it go by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, there's like I said, there's lots of history there. The reason for the idea of opening up a new third base that would be more co-ed friendly, would be built more advanced, I guess. Those reasons are all great, but can you update Parris Island to be that same level?
I'm not sure. And then I'm just thinking about my own boot camp experience. I went to Parris Island. They had the 4th Battalion there. We've seen the female drill instructors, and just the way that they do business was intense. There's some guys that were scared of the female drill instructors. First off, to be a female in the military was hard enough, and to be at the same level as our drill instructor, something tells me they had to work really hard to get to that level. Those weren't just light pushover women, so they drilled those women accordingly. And it becomes interesting when you start mixing male and females. I think part of the reason that certain things work as well as they do, like we talked about the breakdown of the you come into boot camp, I have to break you down as an individual to build you up as a team.
Right.
One of the biggest things that a lot of those, remember, we're talking about 18-year-old, 19-year-old, sometimes 17-year-old young men. What's one of the first thing that young men at that age are really thinking about? When I take you away from that, I can break you to make you and mold you to what I need you to be. And
then integrating adds a different element.
Right. And it's going to be interesting. I'd love, like I said, I'd love to see the science behind it after it's done.
I like the way, James, you phrased it, right? Because I think interesting is the right word. We don't know if it's going to be good or bad. We don't know, right? Because it's not been done. So what does it mean? And how does it impact not only our male folks, how does it impact our female folks? What does it mean for the intelligence of our military? I mean, all those things are up for grabs and could be impacted both in positive ways and potentially in negative ways.
Yes,
and I think
absolutely.
It's important to say what you said, which is, well, we really need to be looking at this as we do this to make sure that if it's not working out as well as we want, we make tweaks along the way, I guess is the way to say that.
In that vein, would it be better just to rework Parris Island and San Diego so that they have sort of a testing ground for how they're going to be implementing this change? If they're going to close both and build a whole new third one without any sort of data on how well this is working, maybe it's better that they just repurpose is the word I'm looking for, repurpose Parris Island and San Diego and say, okay, let's do this for a couple years and get some data on how this is working. And then we can see if it would, a third base would be smart for us to build.
So I do have some thoughts about that, because when I was reading the article and I was looking at it, and I'm like, the first question that popped into my head was like, well, what are these extra expenses that need to be made to integrate training? Like, what are the logistical requirements? What's really needing to be done here? I think all of this, uh, in general, is a good thing. I can only speak from personal experience, right? Like we were just talking about pogues, right? For 11 years I was an enlisted person. When I commissioned, I became a pogue officer, so I became a logistics officer, and my my experience went from being in an all male infantry unit to now I was leading co-ed units, and that was new for me. So I do have some. I don't have studies, I don't have scientific experience, but I can speak from personal experience, which was that the only question that really needs to be answered, overall, when you talk about integration and co-ed military service, is, can that person do the job? And that should always be the question, that military leaders should be asking. There's going to be hiccups along the way, yes, but can the person do the job, regardless of gender, regardless of social norms or political pressure from outside? Like, because at the end of the day, the military can't bow to political pressure or to social norms, because they have a responsibility to be able to do their job. So, and then what I noticed, we started integrating females into combat arms, and I supported a combat arms battalion.
Yes.
So they were very nervous about this, as was kind of anticipated. So my battalion commander asked me to put together a presentation for the other company commanders to talk about how to lead a unit of co-ed, of co-ed soldiers. And really what it came down to was just you treat them the same. There really is no difference. You just treat them the same. You have the same expectations. You have to make like certain logistical accommodations for what you're going to do. But in the field environment, when you're training like you fight, like there's not the room for that. Shrinks down. You have to just you have to be mission oriented, as we always are, and keep moving forward. And what I noticed was that the females who were in these combat arms units, they want to be there.
Oh, yeah.
They immediately, what I heard from some of the combat arms units was that these are some of the best soldiers we have, because they've been through the tough stuff, and you're not finding anyone in general who goes to a combat arms unit and isn't excited to be there. And they said females even more so. They were trying to prove themselves that they were just as good or better than the male counterparts that they were working with. So I think that I think that it is that, as always, it just the question that should be asked is, can you do the job or not? And I think the Army is moving that way. I don't know if you guys have talked about the new Army combat fitness test. They no longer have age or gender.
Yes.
Dating area. It's just based on job. So you're an infantry person, you have to do the events at this standard. If you're a clerk, you have to do them, at this standard.
Right.
I think that's kind of moving in the right direction. Have these gender neutral things.
Go ahead,
I'm
James.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was like, that makes me extremely happy, because in 2015 when I got out and I was at 10th Marine Regiment, so we had females in the supply unit, the comm, things like this, but we still had our 08s. There were some of us that didn't mind whether there was female Marines that worked with us on the gun line or anything else. We just want to say, hey, can you do the job? Can you do the job? Can you carry these 100-pound rounds? Can you PFT with us? Can you do the CFT with us at our level? If you can do that, we ain't got nothing for you. Because then, that usually was the cutoff line. We had female Marines that could do more pull-ups than the average man, and just to sit there and look at you like, yes, now what do you want? And you were like, all right, yep, she's in. Like, it's like she could do the job. She could handle the physical rigors. She can handle the intelligence of it all. Run it. Come on. Jump in the truck. Let's go. If you can make that line. And I think that right there is that distinguishing factor. Now, if that's the way they're going to do it across the board, like the Army has, then it's just clean cut. I don't care if you're man, woman, 5'2", 6'3", can you do these things? If you can do these things, you're in. And I ain't got no problem. I'll never have a problem with that.
This is definitely a much bigger conversation. I'm sure we could also dive into with a future Scuttlebutt episode. Um, uh, Cutting back just a bit to Parris Island, San Diego, would it be a big loss for the Marine Corps, the history, if these bases were to close and a third one were to be opened? You know, that's obviously 1890s. It's quite a long time. That there's a lot of history there.
Yeah. I'm not comfortable with them closing that much history. There's a lot of other bases around the United States that have never lost its footstep. We live in Pittsburgh, Fort Pitt. You still see the outline of the old fort, the old pit, the old fort there. Fort Sumter, South Carolina,
Mhm.
still has the forts up. You know, still has the cannons on the side of the building, depending on the fort you see. That's history.
Hopefully they can find a way to repurpose it. I think that would be, it seems like the best option, because you don't want to lose that history. I think we have a lot of opportunities in this country to sort of close down something and, you know, build something new. Let's break down here in Pittsburgh. Let's break down the Three River Stadium. Let's break down the Civic Arena. Let's build something new. But if you can repurpose, I think that's a way to expand that history, keep that history there, and probably make it better in the future, better in the long run. So no decision has been made as of yet on this. They're just investigating that as an option. But it definitely created a lot of buzz, a lot of people up in arms about the idea of like, don't close this. There's too much history here. There's a lot of families, military families that live down in that area. And so there's a lot of money that traffics through that area. So if you were to close that spot, yeah, you might make some on the sale of the land, but you're losing a lot of that income from the military families that are going to be there.
Doesn't this fall under like they do this every once in a while? Like they do a base realignment and closure evaluation. They call it the BRAC.
That's right.
I would have to think that like that would be involved in that whole process in some manner if they decided to do that.
Yeah, but that process is more service all four services. And so what this is, it is really, if you look at the bill, the 2020 bill, it's really this notion of the integration of both males and females. And there is a need to either update those two facilities so that they can appropriately handle that, or repurpose them to something else and create a new one. And so I think for the Marines itself is trying to understand, you know, what makes the most sense, both in terms of honoring history, as pointed out by James, but also acknowledging cost.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll keep our thumb on the pulse of this, and if we have any updates, we will definitely let you know in a future episode. I'd like to move on to our main story now. We've sort of had a nice through line. We've talked about this over the first several episodes: who serves, where they serve from, why do they serve, thank you for your service. But now we want to talk about, should you join the military? We obviously have two veterans here with us today who would probably answer yes. You've had extensive careers in the military. I'm assuming this, unless you would like to debate that. Danny, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts in your decade working, over a decade working with veterans. It is obviously a huge decision for a young person to make. Should I join the military? There are inherent risks. There's a lot of benefits. Ryan, I'll jump to you first because you actually spent some time as a recruiter or an recruiter assistant. Is that correct?
Yeah, technically I was a recruiter assistant because in the Army, recruiting becomes like an assignment, but they needed assistants, so they kind of gave you these special orders to go work in a recruiting office. So every year, the military, at least the Army does, they reevaluate, what jobs they're trying to fill and how much of a signing bonus they're going to give you and how these things work. But overall, to answer your question, I'd say, yeah, join the military. There is a lot of benefits. I think it's good for people in a lot of different ways: world experience, job training, money for education, and signing bonuses. And I think, you can kind of pick how long you want to go in. I would encourage young people to do it if it fits their you know, their lifestyle choice or their future goals. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think we get too. I think you know kids, especially like my generation, you know, it just felt like they would just you have to go to college, you have to go to college, you have to go to college, and now we have all these kids with a bunch of college debt and you know not enough job prospects. Where you know the military will always be there, and so will college, and I think people should be you know should definitely consider it more as a possible future avenue.
James, you were in our VBC episode where we had a young gentleman who was considering service.
Yes.
He was not looking at the Marines. He was a bit too concerned about seeing combat.
It hurt.
One of the risks definitely is the potential to see combat, life-threatening situations. You had a very interesting and insightful answer to that. That if I'd love to hear you speak to again, if possible.
Combat is inherent. It is the nature of the beast. You can do an administrative job, supply job, logistics, infantry, artillery, motor T. The whole entire point of what your job is to support the mission in times of conflict. That's the military at its finest. So inherently, maybe you get lucky and you spend 20 years and nothing ever happens. You might spend 6 months and something pops off and you're up to get called. But you train where he was worried about like conflict and combat. I asked him if he was if he ever did sports, i.e. like a football team. You go to war every Friday night, every Saturday night, every Sunday afternoon with the people to your left and the right. And the best thing you can do is train for your job. You know, and just pray that your people to your left and the right got you and you do what you're supposed to do. And everybody will come home. Everybody will come home all right, as best as you can. How's that? And so that was my point of it.
Yeah, I just want to jump on that because there is actually some good research out there. A lot of research looking at both veterans and comparing it to civilians. But in terms of combat experiences, we actually see that about 70% of veterans who go through combat experiences talk about it really strengthening their relationships with their combat buddies, right? And those are lifelong relationships. So there's a positive aspect to that. The second thing, and I think it's something you don't know how strong you are till you have to go through something. So, you know, combat itself, and we see this, right? We see about 67% of veterans talking about the fact that, you know, that really like, wow, I can deal with this. I'm stronger than I realized. And so, you know, the Japanese word for crisis is also opportunity. And I think we have to think about what is the positive opportunities that can come out of that experience, even though it's a very difficult, challenging experience.
Danny, you mentioned before we started recording that your father and your grandfather were both in the military, correct?
Yeah.
You know, and we realized in one of our episodes that one of the reasons that people join is sort of family history. Is there a reason that you did not join?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say ignorance. It's hard for a professor to say that, but I think it's ignorance. I will tell you, when I was 27, finishing up my PhD, I had gone over to Kadena Air Force Base and worked 3 months doing some teaching as a grad student. And when I came back, like an idiot, still an idiot at 27, I walked into a recruiting station because I wanted to join, because I thought, oh, this is fantastic. It's really good stuff. And of course, I walked into a general recruiting station, not to an officer's. And they just looked at me like I was a complete idiot and sent me away. When actually, if I'd gone into the right kind of recruiting station at that point in time, in terms of understanding the needs, I might have got picked up. So I guess the short answer is I didn't realize that I wanted to do that, didn't really think of it. And I think that's unfortunate.
And Ryan, you know, we've dipped into a bit of James's reasons for joining back whenever he joined up with the Marines. Why did you join to start? And it would sort of help us understand, should you join? Like, what was your reason?
Yeah, I mean, so I grew up in a military family. My father was an Air Force veteran, and so I grew up traveling all over the place. It just was kind of like, you know, a part of my life. But I was, I mean, obsessed with like Rambo, Top Gun, GI Joe, like everything. Like it was just from a very young age. Like that's what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to. That is what I wanted to do. So it wasn't. Um, it never had crossed my mind not to join the military. And, I was going. I was dead set on being a Marine until I was about 15, and I loved the uniforms. They're the sharpest.
We've
looking
talked
dudes.
about those uniforms. Yeah, the dress blues.
So my dad was stationed in Albania at the time at a Nemesine. We got things, went crazy, and we got evacuated, and we spent a few weeks on the USS Nashville. And then I got to spend some time with Marines, and I was super excited. And then I was like, oh my God, these dudes are just on this boat. Like, they got nothing to do. Like, Navy guys are at least like doing stuff, right? The Marines are just sitting here like cleaning weapons and waiting to go on a training exercise or something. And I didn't like the idea of being in the Navy because I didn't want to be on a boat. And me, being a dumb kid, didn't realize Marines have to go on boats. So then after that, I was like, it's the Army for me.
Yeah, that leads me to think one thing it's really important for folks listening, I guess, is making sure that young people realize it is actually an opportunity that they should explore. Because I think the examples here of my ignorance and someone not even realizing, well, Marines are on a boat kind of notion is you won't know that until you check it out, I think is really important.
We're not always on boats.
No, I was just repeating him. I didn't agree with him, James.
James, you did mention, I think it was our first episode that I mentioned, like, hey, have you been on a ship?
Yes.
Correct me. Yeah. Well, have you been on a ship? And you said that, yeah, they kind of keep us off to the side and keep us out of the way until we're.
They don't want us to cause any damage. That's fine.
Right.
That's fine. We'll sit in our corner.
We have these risks. You're going to be deployed for X amount of time. You're going to miss family time. There's all of these inherent risks that are involved in the military. But you're right, Danny, to say like, the more informed you are, the better you're going to be equipped to walk into a recruiting station and ask the right questions. James, what benefits did you receive in joining the military?
Outside of that, I got to leave Beaver County in one piece instead of seeing where, and truth be told, even my mother said it, you can stay here. But at the time in 99, Beaver County was closing down. Like even the jail was getting closed. And, all these things were shifting. And at this point, if you didn't have that college degree, I mean, you didn't need a college degree to really get a job as long as you started then. But a few years later, it shifted. That whole shift of you needed a college degree just to get an entry-level, good-paying job. Was really the case, and I was able to go and get life experiences and to see something bigger than just the Pittsburgh region. I got to travel a little bit up and down 95. I got to see things I wouldn't, experience things I wouldn't. I wouldn't have the beautiful kids I had if it wasn't for me leaving. Those were the short-term ones, but long-term, my mother, who I love her to pieces, she knows it. So if she ever gets to see this, she'll hear it. Is like one of my things that we always did was we competed with each other. So every time that I would pick up rank, she'd pick up rank because she works for the jails. So she'd pick up rank, I'd pick up rank. And then I think she hit like lieutenant, and I was like, Mom, that's not fair. I'm enlisted. That's cheating. But I'm almost 40 and I'm retired. Me and my mom have talks about where she's going to retire in 6 to 8 years.
Right.
I'm done. So I told her, I was like, haha, you beat me by going officer, but I beat you by retiring. Haha. So, that's the long-term things. My kids, because I retired, they have benefits. I'm not as worried about them going to college. I'm not as worried about what their next moves are going to be. They're covered. It's COVID out here. people have been shut down. People worry about their health care.
Mm-hmm.
I have it. My
Right.
kids have it. You know, the qualities, especially if you spend a lifetime in this, which really isn't that long, are monumentous. It can literally change your life.
Yeah, and that's not even speaking to like the hard and soft skills that you
Right.
are learning. I mean, you can go to college, you can get a degree. In the military, you're going to learn a lot. Maybe Ryan, you can expand upon that. This idea of how much did you learn coming through the Army?
Yeah, I mean, I think James hit it on the head. Is like you can go and there are benefits, so many benefits, that every time I spoke with a soldier and I counseled them, I was like, are you going to school? Like, if you're not enrolled in some sort of class,
You're failing.
you're wrong. Like, you need to be doing something, because there's just so much out there that you can take advantage of, the GI Bill, the tuition assistance, and things like that. You know, and the benefits are amazing in that way. And I think that the military doesn't do everything great, but one of the things that they do very well is they typically, don't ask you to do a job until they have trained you to do it. Right? Their job is to get you to a standard, and they will train you and train you and train you until you meet that standard.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a bit of a generalization, but that's a I think, in my opinion, one of the merits of that the military does. It tries to be a meritocracy. It does pretty good at that most of the time, and it has world class training, and you get it for free.
It's something I had a question on as a civilian. I sort of see like you have basic training, then you have advanced individual training. You could expand into other training areas. And that's a question I have that sort of confused me about the training aspect of the military is, do you have the option to jump to pretty much almost any training that you are qualified for? If, say, you want to become a paratrooper, say you want to become a sniper, say these specialized training areas, you want to become an engineer. Are these things that you would say at the recruiting station, hey, I want to do this job and that's what I'm going to be trained for? Or do you sort of meddle in a bunch of different things?
In almost every case, yes. You would get to go in and say, they would kind of look at it and say, like, we have availability in all of these things. And it could change, month to month. If a person goes to a recruiting station and doesn't get the answer that they want, I say, check back in a few months, because that can change. It changes all the time. If you're like, I want to be an Army Ranger, infantry, guaranteed, want it. And they go up and they're like, well, Ranger battalions don't need anybody right now. So, but in 6 months, guess what they do? So you can get all of that kind of stuff, like, put into your contract. You will go to Ranger school, you will go to airborne school, things like that. The job training, otherwise, like, you can't, it's pretty difficult in the military to just kind of jump around whenever you want to do different types of jobs. That's a little more challenging. If you're like, yes, I'm an infantry guy and now I want to be an artillery guy, like, unless they really need it or you're doing something special, like, they're going to say, like, why are we going to pay for you to go to artillery school? Like, there's different sorts. There's skill identifiers like sniper, airborne, air assault, recovery specialist. Those are like skill identifiers, but your job still stays the same.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. James, is that the same way in the Marines?
Yes, it is. So, like, if you wanted to be a sniper, that's our infantry guys, but there might be something different where, so if I had a really good shooter like that young man we spoke about in the other Scuttlebutt, if he could continue to shoot like that, I'll take him to a designated marksman course. Mm-hmm. I'll send him to, if he's that good, maybe beyond the designated marksman, he joins the Marine Corps Rifled Squad. Maybe we send him to competitions to be a shooter. Things like that. Those things are available, and every 4 years you're up for re-enlistment or however long your contract is. Maybe you want an incentive to go to jump school, to go to SEER school, things like that. And it's possible. And just like you said, month to month, maybe last month it wasn't there, but first availability, you got it, run it. Mm-hmm. But you never leave that designation of your your MOS.
Danny, in your many years working with veterans, and I'm sure you've talked with them about their reasons for joining, has any sort of stuck out to you as like, wow, that's sort of obscure, or maybe that was the best reason I've ever heard?
So I'm going to switch your question. Sorry.
Okay. No problem.
Because I think we had two guys who gave you their reasons, really good reasons, and I think some common reasons there.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to flip it around and say, well, what do we know about with veterans as they get out? How do they look compared to civilians, right? And so there's some really good data, and I'm just going to give you a quote from a piece of research that came out recently, which looked at veterans from 2005 through 2015, post 9/11 vets. And when we look at them, they are outperforming their civilian counterparts in employment, income, and educational attainment. And they're less likely to deal with poverty as well. So while we're hearing the reasons to join, and I think there are lots of good reasons to join, there are also, it's an individual decision as well, right? We note that, right? There's also selfishly, for lack of a better word right now, reasons to join. And we see that there's actually a famous study, and where we look at children of Kauai. Kauai is an island in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And they studied every child born in 1948. It's about 600 and some kids. And they followed them. They still follow the ones that are still alive. Mm-hmm. Brilliant professor, because she got the U.S. government to pay her to go to Kauai every year since 1948. Now, she actually willed the study to one of her graduate students. That's a totally different matter. Nonetheless, what we find is that Kauai was very poor at the time. But what we find is for the individuals that left Kauai and joined the military, they use that as a stepping stone out of poverty. And if we look at the research that's out there, joining the military is a way to shift your trajectory. I think James mentioned it. He was talking about Beaver County. Beaver County is a great place. But at the time, it was going to go through some rough road. That's what he said. Mm-hmm. And what did his mom say? Hey, this might be a good time to shift your trajectory. Go do something else and shift your journey. Mm-hmm. And so I think we need to look at it as that opportunity that exists.
Boy, I feel like we could bat this around for another hour. But, really anybody who's listening that's considering joining, I think you've heard some really great points on the reason to join. If you have reasons not to join, those are all valid reasons as well. As we were mentioning, this is a very individual experience. This is a change of trajectory. This is in some ways a selfish decision to make, but you have to make it. So if you are considering it, do your research and talk to your recruiters, because they're going to be the ones that are probably going to offer you the most information that you can potentially get.
One last little tip, make sure
you
do as well as you can on that ASVAB.
That is the test that you have to take getting into the military that will determine which jobs you are eligible for.
Bang that thing out the park. That's my only warning. Because that right there, that trajectory maker, that entry level, that will change your life drastically in the military.
Ryan's shaking his head too, so work on that ASVAB. Let's move on to our final Scuttlebutt round. This is obscure, potentially military headlines from around the globe. James, I'd like for you to take the helm for this.
Oh, I hope that y'all have something lighter, because this one kind of got me to the core. The Associated Press came out with an article September 28th that military suicides have increased by up to 20% this year compared to last year in 2019. And senior Army leaders are saying that they've seen a 30% jump in active duty suicides. I know times are hard out here. Everybody's going through it. Check on your people. If honoring your service members, we are all going through it. Everybody's having the dark days. I say it all the time. Go out of your way to do something nice for somebody, because you never know how much it actually means.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, James. And yes, I think that's something to definitely be aware of, especially during our COVID phase that we are in, that reaching out, trying to connect with veterans, making sure that they're heard, listened to, that they're doing all right. It's something that we try to do with the Veterans Breakfast Club is connecting people.
I mean, if we have any, current military listeners, I work at a vet center. It is a national organization. There are over 300 vet centers. We offer free and confidential counseling. We can do it over the phone. We can do it via video teleconferencing. And the best part about it is that we see quite a few active duty people, for the reason being that we are confidential. We, unlike the rest of the VA, the DoD cannot access our records. That is one of the big reasons the vet center exists. So although we are part of the VA, we don't share our records. And so if you are currently serving person and you want to speak with somebody and know that it's going to be confidential, you can call a vet center. We have no requirement to report it to your chain of command.
Danny, if you'd like, have any scuttlebutt for us?
Yeah, I guess I'll just change it up. I'm native to Pennsylvania. Left for a while, as most Pennsylvanians do, and came back. Actually, we are #1 state in the country in terms of the folks living and dying in the state, in the sense of we were born here, we leave for a while, and we come back. So that's an interesting little fact. But the one fact I always like to hold on is that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania ranks 2 in terms of the size of its National Guard and Reserve, and ranks 4 in terms of the size of its veteran population. So I think, we're not a huge state in terms of land, but we are a huge state in terms of its commitment to this country and the Constitution.
What are the other states that outrank us in terms of veterans?
And now you're testing me. Okay,
Florida is one of them.
Florida, Texas. Look at him; he's very excited. Florida, Texas, and I don't know the other. I apologize. I should. North Carolina may be one. I'm not sure. I apologize, but yes,
that's all right.
We're #4.
I knew Western PA, where we are, definitely has a very high concentration of veterans. Very high. In terms of size of PA, those are significant numbers. Ryan, a bit of scuttlebutt.
So a few weeks ago at another BBC event, we talked about Top Gun, and I can't get over this because I love Top Gun.
Same.
Like I said earlier in the program, love it.
That Top Gun Maverick trailer gets me. I have chills watching that trailer.
I can't wait for that movie.
I know.
So I found out, and I verified this through multiple sources, that if you are at the actual Navy Top Gun school, right, the actual one, and you quote the movie Top Gun, you will be fined $5. And I'm like, I wouldn't have made it through the first day.
Oh yeah.
I've been like, I feel the need for speed, and they've been like, you're out of here.
Yep. That's it. Now, do they consider Kilmer's jaw chomp to be a quote? When he's just like,
I would consider it that.
Yeah.
If there was a volleyball field at that school, it'd be over.
Look, you just had to take my money. Just take it. Just here you go.
Yeah. I'm just gonna write a check for $1,000. That covers me for my entire time with
the week. It covers me for the week.
The week. Yeah. Also, while I was, delving into the rabbit hole of the internet while researching this, I also found out that Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins was originally supposed to be a Toto song.
Now, what is a Toto song?
Toto, Africa, the band stuff?
Yeah. No.
Sean is showing
you just showed our age. Yep, you just showed our age.
Sean is showing his age. He was not even a thought yet.
No matter what, it would not have been a better version.
Yeah.
Bar none.
That's fair.
Danger Zone, like I grew up dancing to that as a 5-year-old,
Again, thank you for that age reference.
Of course. And for our last little bit of scuttlebutt, this comes from taskandpurpose.com. The Army's new Field Manual 722, which outlines the service's holistic health strategy, stresses the importance of soldiers getting enough sleep. I love the headline here that grab your whoobies. The Army wants you to nap like your life depends on it. There's been a lot of sleep research, and the Army definitely knows that they expect a lot from their their recruits. The documents of this field manual covers everything, including soldiers' nutrition intake in heat and in cold, how to motivate yourself with productive self-talk, and practicing mindfulness. It says the guidance for the ideal amount of caffeine a soldier should have to stay alert. And this is between 200 and 400 milligrams for a typical day. Now, I recently watched and read Generation Kill, and they talked a lot about Ripit drinks in this. And James's face, I had a straight question for James and Ryan, knowing this. How many Ripits is too many Ripits?
There's no such thing.
Right. Thank you. I don't know what you speak of. If we can, Ryan could probably attest to this. Artillery keeps coffee pots on standby. It's actually part of my packing list.
Yeah.
Like, what is too much caffeine? That's the only thing we got. Caffeine and nicotine. Done.
Yeah.
Like, so what else did you want from us? So I don't know. I didn't know that there was such thing as too much. I've heard of, Ripit gremlins that would just sit there and wait and take them by the cases and run off and hide in dark corners. But outside of that, I didn't know there was too much. When you said 400 milligrams, I'm like, that's like a cup or two.
So
that's really
supposedly, well, from this manual, the number of Ripits to get 400 milligrams of caffeine is 5. So technically 6 Ripits is too many Ripits.
That's a lot of Ripits.
Yeah. But is it though? If you have the one, if you have the one when you wake up in the morning, the one when you have your breakfast MRE, the one when you have your one for lunch, the one when you have for dinner, that one that you needed because you were sitting around and it was late and you got tired. We're already at 5.
Yeah,
we're already at 5.
So and James, the obvious follow-up question is, how many Ripits have you ever actually drank in a day?
Oh, good.
I don't think he can say that because we'll have to question whether he's human.
That's thank you. I plead the 5th.
It becomes a real issue. You have to be watching these dudes drinking Ripits. How much water did you drink today? Sit in front of me and drink a canteen, because we've had to cut people off from Ripit consumption. That was a thing. You had to, you're sitting, we were driving there, you're talking to each other in your CVC helmet, and one dude's just talking a million miles a minute, and you're like, how many Ripits have you had today?
Well, right. that and he's saying that it's 5 Ripits, 6 Ripits. At what size? At what size can? Because I've had Ripits that were, about this big. So, and that was one.
Okay.
By serving size, that might have been.
Shaun, this is a can of worms, buddy. You got your Scuttlebutt. You got your Scuttlebutt, pal.
I am gonna drink a Ripit before. I'm afraid of even saying this. Before one of our Scuttlebutts, maybe not the next one, and maybe try to drink another one during the actual recording just to see how it affects.
Don't do it, please don't. Because a lot, buckle up, because Ryan knows, depending on serving size, and we didn't always get the little cans that you can find at the Dollar General. We were getting the size like those giant monster cans with the top that pops off. That was 1, which by serving size is like 4. So now you're playing with fire.
Yeah. You know what? You're right. Can of worms. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Scuttlebutt. I'd like to thank Ryan All and Danny Perkins, both of you, for joining us for today's episode. Again, we ask that if you are enjoying this, you can rate us wherever you get your podcast. Like, share, subscribe, ring that bell on YouTube. Send us an email of how many Ripits you have actually drank. We'd be interested to hear that. Until next week, thank you so much.